Hello, everyone. A very good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all of you, depending on where you are. Uh, Welcome to this session on the art of involved and evolved reading. And while I introduce myself, I would love to hear a hello back from all of you so that I know who all are out there, your names, or what you're doing, where you're from. Today, for all of you out there who find solving reading and comprehension questions on the GMAT, a very, very difficult task. Today's session is really going to make things easy for you. Okay, so let me get about introducing myself. I am Sunita. I'll be your host for this evening. I'm the verbal head at GMATVERBAL, and I have been in this prep industry for almost a decade now. Uh, Prepping students is my passion. All right, it's a passion first, and it became a profession later. Seeing students develop skills which they had not known about, and seeing how it helped them really gives me a different kind of a high, and that's how I got into this profession. If some of you have seen the course at GMAT, the course itself has been created by me with a lot of input from my colleagues as well. So let's see, today we're going to talk about this art of involved and evolved reading. It's one of its kind methodology that you will encounter. So guys, I want you guys to get excited about it, and let me look at who all are there. So let me first wish once again a very warm welcome to all of you. Hi Anubhav, hi Raul, nice to see you guys back. Hello Himanshu, hi Dilip, hello Pratyusha, hello Abhishek, hello Manish. Then we have Augusta with us. Hi Augusta, I hope I'm spelling your name correctly. I mean, I don't know how to spell that. MV. Hi Mayank, hello Anshika, hi Shivam, hi Ekra, hi Gauri, and there's Anshul with us. Hi Anshul, hi Jay, good to see you back. Hello Vardhan. Okay guys, I can see a lot of you who've been with me on my earlier webinars are back, and it's very, very nice, very heartwarming to see all of you guys. Forgive my hoarse voice today, but I'll try to make sure that that doesn't interfere with the, all the excitement that you're going to have. Hi Amit, hi JP. So are you guys all ready to really, really, really decode reading and comprehension? Let me put up a poll for that, guys. Are you all excited to decode reading and comprehension on the GMAT? Hi Jashim, sorry. Hi Supriya. Supriya says yes, 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 yes. I like that kind of enthusiasm, and if you're really, really, the motive being that if you're really interested in improving your RC, this is the session for you. All right. Okay, guys. So let me quickly thank you, Supriya, for that, that round of encouragement that really pushes me on. Sorry. Okay. So let me quickly set the agenda for, sorry, guys, about that. Let me set the agenda for the evening. What are we going to do today? Not necessarily in that order. First of all, we're going to quickly talk about, in about 2-3 minutes, the importance of RC, guys. A lot of people give attention to SC and CR, but somehow they relegate the RC to the background. Very, very big mistake. So we're going to talk about why it's a very big mistake. The next very important factor, why do most people falter at RC? What is it about RC that puts us off? Very briefly, I'm going to talk about 2-3 minutes over that. And later on, I'm going to talk about the time-saving irony. A lot of people rush through RCs. They read the passage very, very quickly, thinking that, okay, let me save time here. I'm going to look at the questions, because questions is where I'm going to score. So who cares how quickly I read the passage? I'm going to come back to the passage for the answers. And that's the irony. You try to save time and you actually take more time and sacrifice accuracy in the process. We're going to talk about that as well. We'll practice some very, very interesting questions today. Okay, and we'll look at improvement strategies, and of course there will be the Q&A round. So let's quickly first start off with importance of RC. In the meantime, let me quickly look if, okay. So I think you guys are all attention. Let me continue then. Great. Now, when you talk about RCs on GMAT, we all know that GMAT exam works on a certain algorithm, okay? And the algorithm depends, how the algorithm works depends on how you perform in the exam. We know that RCs form a very big chunk of the overall total number of questions, okay? You would get about 3 to 4 passages, even 5 if you're unlucky, actually. And anything between 12 to 15 questions, which is like slightly over a third of the total questions on your verbal section, okay? The problem with RCs is GMAT is an adaptive test and RCs come consecutively, okay, one after the other. Unlike a CR, which might be followed by a SC question, or an SC question might be followed by a CR, one RC question will invariably be followed by at least another RC question and more. And unfortunately, if you do not understand the passage, you might get more than one question incorrect and consecutively, and that's going to really hurt your score very badly. Okay, I mean, consecutive mistakes are penalized really heavily. One mistake, your algorithm goes 1 notch down. 2 mistakes, it goes 3 notches down. I mean, we've conducted experiments, we've gathered data, and let's say if you have these 3 students, okay, so if you have, let's say, student A who makes sure that all SC are incorrect and the rest are correct, another who makes sure all CR are incorrect and the rest are correct, and if you have somebody who's ensuring that all RC are incorrect and the rest are correct, look at their scores, look at the difference. You can see that the student who gets all the RCs incorrect is much lower than the scores of student A and B. Okay, that means what? That means that the score of the RC affects the exam more. Okay, RCs come consecutively, get them wrong, you will really, really, really be penalized heavily. It will affect your score heavily. And especially if you make the mistake in RCs in the beginning, it can really hurt your overall score a lot. Let's say the first question that you get on your exam is an RC, which means the first 4 questions are RCs. And for some reason, if you get 2 or 3 of them wrong, you'll never recover, guys. Okay, are we clear on this, guys? The importance of RC. Are we clear on this, all of us? Let me ask you. Are we all absolutely clear here? Why RCs are really important? I'm not saying that SC and CR are not important, but realizing that RCs really need all your attention is very important. First thing. Now let me ask you some questions, guys. Can you tell me why you're so scared of RCs, all of you? Yes, JP, this is eye-opening. One would like to think that, okay, an RC is the same as a CR or an SC. Well, by and large it is, but the algorithm does not recognize that this is an RC question. It just recognizes this is another question. If you get 2 questions wrong, the algorithm thinks, okay, there are 2 consecutive questions wrong. This guy is not really very skilled in this, in the verbal reasoning, and therefore it serves you easy questions, okay? So yes, my questions. What is it that scares you most about RCs, guys? Why do you don't like solving RCs? What is your fear? What is the fear factor regarding RCs? Come on, let me see what you're telling me. So Supriya says, boring passages. I know, Supriya, really boring ones. No? Who wants to read about some lizard living in some mountain? No? Vardhan says it's time consuming. Yes, Vardhan, it does take time, but it also gives you a lot of rewards if you get it right. Augusta says they are lengthy. Well, they're not all very lengthy. If you look at GMAT passages, they can vary between as low as 180 words to up to as high as 450 words. But I've rarely seen a passage that long. On an average, about 350 words you can expect. So I would say that's the lengthy. But then I can understand on the exam it might seem longer than it is. Jay says, I have technical background and I struggle with humanities. So Jay, today the technique that I'm going to show you, it will really help you resolve this problem. The way to read, like I personally prefer humanities. Somehow science passages kind of throw me off, especially the ones with physics. This was before I stumbled on this involved and evolved reading. So there was this one passage about quantum tunneling, and I'm like, quantum tunneling now. What's that? And then I applied the involved and evolved reading on that. And trust me, I got all the questions correct. And this was before I started teaching. So this is really going to help you, Jay. JP says it's time consuming. Nora says inferences are a problem. Yes, Nora. Drawing inferences on the RCs is difficult, okay? And we're going to talk about how to ensure that we can draw the correct inferences. Vibhor says it's never easy to understand. So I want to show you, Vibhor, how it can become easy to understand. Then Deepak says different types of RC. So Deepak, I'm guessing you're trying to say different genres or different topics is what you meant. Rahul says wrong feeling that it can be done at exam without practice. Well, Rahul, I think what you're saying is yes, it's incorrect, or it's actually a very wrong notion that if you don't practice RCs beforehand, you can still do well in the exam. You can't. Absolutely not, Rahul. I agree with you. Nayan says passage talks about topics which are completely unrelatable. Yes, Nayan. So I think topics are a problem. Hi, Chetan Preet. Chetan Preet says vocabulary. Well, Chetan Preet, the good news is at GMATViz, we teach you what to do in case you come across a difficult word. Because see, GMAT per se doesn't test your vocabulary, unlike GRE, which does. So we have this video lesson which tells you what to do if you come across a word which you have never seen before in your life, or maybe you don't know the meaning, and what should you do to get over that hurdle. So we'll talk about that. Deepak talks about topics. Rahul says dense and tricky questions. Yes, Rahul. They are dense and tricky if you don't read them properly. You know, if you read them in a hurry, even simple questions, you are going to stumble over them. Pratyusha says consistency. I think you may mean consistency of topics or difficulty level. I'm not so sure. Dilip says sometimes you don't understand the passage. Anshika says they need a lot of concentration. Anshika, concentration is required for SC, CR, RCs, for everything. So I think what you mean is constant focus, constant concentration. Shubham, confusing answer choices. So Shubham, we are also going to talk about that. Hi Girish, big passages, too much to analyze, especially strengthen and weaken ones. Okay. All right. So sorry guys if I cannot continue all the rest of your troubles, but I think I taken them for granted. Yes, Abhishek, and you're not alone. Lots of other people are in the same boat. Okay, so let's put all your fear factors together and see. I have prepared this slide beforehand, and I know that these are the fears. You know, in fact, the art of involved and evolved reading was born because of the problems that students used to come to me with. This is something which I have not read anywhere, or nobody else actually tells you to do all of these things. So what I understand is unfamiliar genre topics, you know, oh, this is humanities, oh, this is science, oh, this is business, this is economics, this is history, this is geography. Guys, at the end of the day, it's English language, okay? It's English language. Let's see. Again, it's some of you were saying that you have to analyze a lot of information, may not remember it when you're going through the questions, poor recall, close answer choices, time consuming. You know, all of these things have set up a mental block in your minds, guys. You know, actually, none of these will really be a problem. But if you set up a mental block, they will, you know. See, there are different methods people advise you to follow. Different institutes tell you to follow different methods. You know, sometimes they tell you, okay, scan and skip through the passage and come back for the answer. Read the first line, read the last line, and what to do with the middle of the passage, don't bother. Come back for it when you go through the questions. You know, different kinds of things. Read the questions first and then search for the answers. They don't work. They don't work for the simple reason that if you lack precise understanding of the passage, you will not be able to answer the questions with accuracy. Your time will go, your accuracy will also go for a toss. And if you get, you know, if you stumble over the RC questions, the rest of the exam gets affected. Your confidence takes a beating, and then it's downhill from there. I have heard so many students telling me that I was going fine till I came across this RC, and it kind of threw me off and rattled me, and thereafter I just did not recover. Okay, so I'm sure some of you definitely this resonates with a lot of you, right? Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to give you a one paragraph and one question. Okay, just that much. Today we are going to try to concentrate on how to read and answer correctly rather than solving a lot of questions. Okay, the focus will be on how to read and get that question correct. Okay, so I'm going to bring up a passage, guys, with one question only, and I'm going to give you some time to read that paragraph and answer that one question. Okay, hold on to the answers. I'll bring up the polls, and then we are going to see what could have been done with that question, that passage. Okay, so here goes, guys. Let me bring up the. Even if you've solved this passage earlier, don't worry. I want you to do it again. Okay, use whatever method you're using currently. If you're using first line, second line, going back for the answer, whatever you're using, do it. Use your current methodology, because we are going to compare with involved and evolved reading later on. So here goes, guys. You have exactly 3 minutes. I'm being a little generous here. Just one question, but I'm still giving you 3 minutes, okay, to read that paragraph and go through that question. All the best, guys. I'm going to mute myself so that you work in peace, and I'm going to bring up the poll in the meantime. So here goes. Your time starts now. One minute left, guys, for those of you who want that 1 minute, but I can see a lot of you have already put in answers. So one more minute left. All right, guys, your time's up. I'm going to count 5. And those of you who haven't put in your answers, please do so, okay? I'm going to count 5 and then I'm going to end the poll. So make sure that you have put in your answers by then. Here goes. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Just give me a moment, guys. All right, I am ending the poll now. Okay, so can you guys see the poll results, guys? Are the poll results visible to you? Okay. Now, what do the poll results tell you? What do the poll results tell you? 8% of you marked A, 34% of you marked B, 16% of you marked C, 30% of you marked D, and 12% of you marked E. I mean, this varied result tells you what? Yes, Collins, Augusta, Manisha, Jay, Sukh. What do these varied results tell you? Yes, JP, not a clear winner. And it shows that none of you, I mean, let's not say none, but most of you are not sure about your answer. Okay. In fact, you might have also marked the correct answer without the correct reasoning. All right. So, yeah, Shubham says we are all over the place. That's a nice way of putting it, Shubham. Nora says people understand text differently. Yes, Nora, but that should not be the case, right? That should not be the case. So that was Nirnay says lack of clarity. Yes, super varied result. True. So I'm going to bring up this poll again, guys. If you want to note it down, note it down. But then right now you can see such a varied division. Okay, A, B, C, D, E, 34% B, 30% D, 16% C. Kind of. I'm going to bring up the polls again after I explain how to read this passage. Now, guys, you have to be patient, okay? If you're really interested in knowing how to read passages, okay, in order to solve them with accuracy in GMAT, because GMAT passages are of a certain category. The questions are of a certain category. And for them, you need a certain kind of skill. Reading and comprehension is a skill, guys. Okay, it's not just an exercise. It is not a memorizing function. It's a skill which is learned over time. Anyways, we're going to talk about that later. Right now, I want all of y'all to listen to my demonstration of this method with an open mind. Right now, please don't think about time. I'm going to discuss about time later on, how that will be managed. Okay, right now, just concentrate, focus on the process. Clear, guys? So while I'm reading the passage, listen carefully to how I'm reading, where I'm stopping, how I'm relating, what are questions I'm asking. All right. Okay. But before that, there is just a small thought, which came to my mind. Look at these. I'm sure some of you might have been thinking the language was so dense, it was tough to understand. And some of you might even be thinking that even if I didn't understand something, I continue reading forward. Did you do this? Or in the end, I only had a rough understanding of the paragraph. Something about royalist, patriarchalism, feminist, their conflict. Or were you confused between two option choices while solving the questions? Or did you end up rereading the passage? Or did you end up rereading some parts of it? You marked the choice, but you weren't confident. If one or more of these things happened with you, you really need to learn the skill of involved and evolved reading. Yes, familiar? These things happened? Yes, see? Okay, great. Rahul is saying every RC passage is dense. Okay, Rahul. I would say GMAT needs to test you on your verbal reasoning skills. Okay. and a lot of information has to be packed into a small space so that you can be questioned in those 65 minutes. All right. So Nayan says all of them totally. All right, guys. Not so why. I mean, when I started off as a student, I too faced these problems. Although I was a very avid reader, like I used to read about 2 books, sometimes even 3 in a day. Yes, guys. Say on average about 300 pages a book, and I used to read 2 to 3 books a day. This is from my school days. Okay, that kind of avid reader, I too faced this problem when I started off with GMAT passages. And then I understood that no, this was not the way to read it. Reading a fictional book is very different from reading. Yes, Supriya, that's the truth. Super reading speed. But I realized that reading a fictional book on which nobody's gonna question me is very different from reading a passage on which I am going to face tricky questions. Okay. So the complacency that I had that, oh, I am such a good reader, I'm such an avid, voracious reader. So no, Deepak, it's not true. RC is not always a cakewalk for avid readers. Trust me on this. Trust me on this. It's all about your focus, your attention, your technique. We're going to talk about that quickly now. So get set, guys. Just hold on to your chairs, lean forward and listen carefully. Pay attention. Ask yourself, what Sunita is doing. Did I do this? Why did I not do this? Should I do this? When should I do this? How should I do this? Okay, great. Let's go ahead. Here's the passage. It is an odd but indisputable fact. Okay, who is saying this? I ask myself. Okay, the moment I read this, which sounds like an opinion, I'm like, who is saying this? Quickly in my mind, I run it through. And I realize since no third party has been attributed, it must be the author's opinion. Okay, here. All right. So the author finds something odd. I don't know what yet, but the author does not dispute it. Okay. All right. That here, now I'm going to use my sentence correction skills that is taught to me in GMAT at GMATViz before I am taught the RC skills. That is connecting this clause to this clause. So what is going to come up is a fact which the author finds odd, but a fact which the author does not disagree with. What is that fact? 17th century English women. Okay, so here he's talking about certain English women, and there's a modifier about these English women. These English women who are generally, typically regarded as among the forerunners of modern feminism. Okay, so this whole thing is a modifier for these women. These are, if I shorten it down, these women are early feminists. If they are forerunners, they are early feminists. So these 17th century women are early feminists. These women are almost all identified with the royalist side. Now you'll notice I'm going a little slow. I'm like walking on the floor, which is slippery with oil, and I'm putting my feet down one at a time. I'm pressing down on the word. So the author finds what odd? The fact that these English women are all identified with the royalist side. That's the odd part. Okay. Sorry, guys. All right. In the conflict between, so these women are all on a particular side. In the conflict between royalists and parliamentarians, known as the English Civil Wars. Okay, so there are royalists, there are parliamentarians, there's a conflict between the two, and these 17th century early feminists, they all came from the royalist side, and that the author finds odd, but it's true. Okay, so I go a little slow here because if I don't understand the first line, I'm probably not going to understand the rest of it. All right, how many of you all read this line like this, guys? Let me reset the poll and ask you this question. How many of you all read it like this? How many of you all bothered to give it this much of time? I noticed when you were putting in your polls that some of you were actually putting the polls, you put it within 1.5 minutes. How many of you all read it exactly like this? How many of you all understood that the odd fact was that all these early feminists came from one side? Be honest to yourself, guys. It's got nothing to do with me. So I'm going to end the poll. Put in your answers. And if you see, majority of you guys admit to not having read it like this. Now, how difficult was this? Was it really very difficult, guys? So see, 64% of you say you didn't read it quite like this. 36% of you say you did read like this. So the 36% who are saying they read it like this, later on check whether you got your answer right. Okay. So tell me, guys, one more question. Sorry for this. How difficult was this? Was it very difficult? Just answer a yes or no. Was it very difficult to read like this? Was it very difficult to read like this? My question, I'll reset the poll, I think. So my question to all of you is, was it difficult to read like this? I mean, if you train yourself to read like this, do you think it's going to be difficult to read like this? Most of you are saying no. In fact, it is not difficult, guys. It's much more difficult when you have to come back and reread the passage. It's much more difficult when you're confused between two options. Okay? So you will need training, but then if you want to drive a car, don't you need to get trained? If you want to learn how to swim, don't you need to get trained? Shubham, you can stop. So we teach you where to stop. We have these checkpoints when you go through our SC course. There are checkpoints where we tell you, okay, break here. But honestly, let me give you a heads up here. Break wherever you feel like breaking. Break wherever you feel like breaking. You would have seen, I don't really stop at, okay, I'm going to stop here, I'm going to stop there. Stop anywhere. Take in 5-6 words, read it, understand the meaning, then move forward. You know, the more words you'll take in, the less clearly you will understand. It's like if you put in a big mouthful of food in your mouth, chewing is difficult, right? You might swallow a stone or two if you don't, if you put too many things into your mouth at the same time. But if you take small bites, it's easier to chew. And if there are any stones, it will come under your teeth and you will notice it. Anyway, so let's get back to this. So far, if you see how I have summarized, this will also help you. Point 1, the first sentence. The author finds a fact odd but true. What is that fact? There are these women. They are the early modern feminists, and they were all royalists. None of them were parliamentarians. Okay, let me read further. Since. Now we call these transition words, words which add context. All right, and they are very important. We have a complete video lesson dedicated to teaching you the importance of these transition words, how these transition words help you to put a proper context to the passage, to tell you about the shift in view, if there is a shift, and so on and so forth. So here, the word since tells me a reason is going to be given. What is the reason? Since royalist ideology. Okay, so the author was talking about all women belonging to these royalist side. All right, now he's talking about royalist ideology. Why is he talking about royalist ideology? Let's see. Because royalist ideology is often associated with, now when he says it is often associated with, it's not his opinion that it is associated with. It's like he's saying it's generally associated with. You have these questions which say that which of the following is the author's belief, which of the following is the author most likely to agree to. You have to be very careful about such answers. In this sentence, the author is not saying that he associates royalist ideology with radical patriarchalism. He's saying it is generally associated with. Others associate royalist ideology with radical patriarchalism. So be careful here, okay? Let me go ahead. Because royalist ideology is often related with something called radical patriarchalism. Let's say I don't know what it is. Of 17th century political theorist Robert Filmer. All right. So because royalist ideology is kind of linked with patriarchalism of, let me put it this way, Filmer. And then I notice there is this information within dashes. I will read this I'll come back to this, but first I'll complete my sentence. So my sentence is from here to here. Okay, let me read on. Because royalist ideology is often associated with radical patriarchalism of Filmer, historians have been understandably puzzled. All right. So because the royalist ideology is generally thought to be linked to patriarchalism, historians are puzzled about something. What are the historians puzzled about? I'll come back to it. Now let me understand what does this bracket, what information the bracket contains. The bracket is saying a patriarchalism that, okay, so now this is a noun plus noun modifier. This is telling me about Robert Filmer's patriarchalism because it is placed next to Robert Filmer. So Robert Filmer's patriarchalism is what? A patriarchalism. Now, any word which ends with an ism is a principle, okay? Just for your knowledge. Equates family and kingdom. Equates means considers family and kingdom probably equal. And asserts the divinely ordained absolute power. Now, I'm going to forget about divinely and ordained, but basically what I'm going to remember is patriarchalism equates family and kingdom, absolute power of the king, of the male head of the household. Okay, so patriarchalism is all about male dominance, male importance, male power. Great. So, because royalist ideology is all about male dominance, historians have been understandably puzzled. Who is feeling understandable? Who thinks it is understandable? The author. So here again, we have the author's opinion. A small word which tells you author is likely to kind of take the side of historians who are puzzled. Remember, he did feel that it was odd. So this makes sense. So because of this royalist ideology, talking about radical patriarchalism, historians have been puzzled by something. Puzzled by the fact. Which fact? This is the fact. Royalist women wrote criticisms of absolute subordination of women in marriage. Okay, so royalist women were against women being subordinates in marriage. You know, they criticized the fact that women were like slaves in a marriage. And they also wrote assertions of women's rational and moral equality with men. Okay, so now I understand. Because royalist ideology observed absolute male power, this is how I summarize, historians are understandably puzzled that women who belong to such a family, how come they criticized male power? They belonged to a household which was about male dominance. Then why would they actually write these criticisms of male power, right? Okay. So this is the thing that is puzzling author. That means here the author is talking about Robert Filmer's patriarchalism to bring out the fact that this royalist ideology was at one end of the spectrum, and the royalist women who were these early feminists, they were at the other end of the spectrum. That is why the author is bringing out this whole rigmarole of patriarchalism here. Okay, let me read on. Some historians have questioned now, again the author is quoting the other historians, have questioned the facile equation of royalist ideology. Let's say you don't understand facile, leave it out, because GMAT is never going to present you with a question which depends on your knowledge of vocabulary. They will give you context. Look out for that context. Okay. So all you know is some historians have questioned, that means they don't believe in the equation of royalist ideology with Filmerian patriarchalism. Now, what does this mean if they have questioned the equation? That means some historians don't believe that royalist ideology followed Filmerian patriarchalism, right? Okay. So if you read till here, some historians doubt that royalists followed Filmer's ideology. Okay. And indeed, now the word indeed is very revealing, sorry. Indeed tells us that author also perhaps believes something here. And indeed, there may have been no consistent differences between royalists and parliamentarians on the issues of family organization and women's political rights. Okay, so author supports this and says that there may have been no difference between the two sides on certain ideas related to women and family. Okay, there is a but here, another transition word. Okay, but in that case, in which case? The case that there were no differences between royalist and parliamentarian ideas on women and women issues. Had that been the case, one would expect early feminists to be equally divided between the two. Okay, so that's his grouse, that it's odd that all these early feminists belong to royalist side, none belong to parliamentarians. All right. And then he brings out this contrast between the royalist ideology and the writings of these royalist women. And finally he says that had there been no difference between royalists and parliamentarians, then you would have found some feminists also coming from the side of parliamentarians, but that's not the case. So finally, what does the author say? The author rounds up and concludes the oddity that he or she observed at the beginning. Here is what the last sentence means. Your sentence correction skills will come in handy now. If there had been no differences between royalists and parliamentarians' ideas on women and family, then at least half of the women feminists should have come or would have come from the parliamentarian side as well. Okay, so notice how I have put in author's points of view in blue. Can you see that? Okay, so this paragraph, if I have to sum up, it simply says, given the background on the ideologies of the two sides, it is odd that all 17th century English women, early feminists were royalists and none were parliamentarians. To discuss all of that, the author talks about this. Yes, guys, let me have your opinion on this. So, Augusta, Robert Filmer is a person, but the radical patriarchalism of Robert Filmer means one of the principles of Robert Filmer. No, Jay, if you don't understand something, don't go further. Stop there, decode, break down. Guys, how was this? Let me end the poll and ask you a question. How did you like this art of involved and evolved reading guide? Did you like it? You can give me your feedback in the chat box also. So Raul is asking something. I have a question. I have always found that by marking on the passage, it gets relatively easier to summarize. Train your eyes to do that, Rahul. Train your eyes to do that. And if I am not wrong, while you're reading, you can use the mouse to highlight the portions that you're reading. I have trained my eyes to segregate information. All right. So you can train your brain to develop muscle memory to segregate words. Yes, Supriya, the technique, see, all of you please understand, the technique has to be practiced. I have practiced this. I have practiced it many times. So it seems like a cakewalk. You haven't ever done this. So this looks like some rocket science, but trust me, it's not, guys. At the end of the day, it's English. No, Jair, we cannot edit a passage, but you can use the highlighter to read it. And again, I would say, if they give you pen and pencil, so you can't mark on the screen, but you can use your pencil to kind of read, right? You can kind of shadow your pencil to read. You can't write anything, obviously. Oh, Shubham, I like your sense of humor. Shubham says, I feel not evolved enough for this passage. So Shubham, that's the whole idea. You get involved first, then you will evolve. First, you involve yourself with the passage, then you will evolve your understanding. You cannot evolve without that. And it takes time, I understand. Great, guys. So all of you liked it. Now let's see what the answer will be. Now, guys, do you want to give another shot to your answer choices? Do you want to take another shot at the question? Should I bring up the poll again? Would you want to revise your answers? now that you have a better understanding. All of you want to do that? Okay. No, Shubham, you can't search words. You can't use anything except just the cursor to mark. That is how. Okay, let me bring up the poll again. So here I'm ending this. Let me reset the poll. I'll take you back to that. There is question. Yeah. Here are the polls for the first question. With the newfound understanding, if you want, you can change your answer choice. And I'm going to take you back to the previous page. Here it is. Here's the question. Go ahead. You have about 30 seconds, roughly 30 to 40 seconds. If you want, you can maintain your answer choice. If you want, you can change it. Remember, part of choosing the correct answer choice is to understand the passage properly. The other part is to understand the answer choice. Some of you read the answer choice as if there is a train which you've got to catch. You just run after it. Don't do that. Make sure you read the answer choice carefully, okay, thoroughly. Then you mark your answer choice. You have 1 minute, guys. No, you have 40 seconds. Go ahead. You know, primary purpose questions have two parts, guys. Okay. Just listen to this carefully before I end the polls. So every primary purpose would have two parts. One, the purpose, the verb. So you have words like show, qualify, highlight, and lots of other questions have words like evaluate, assess. Then you have words like examine, trace, all those words. All right. That's one part of the primary purpose questions. The other part is the content. So show is the verb, show what? The content. Similarly, qualify is one word, which is the verb. Qualify what? The content. So you have to examine your answer choice by dividing in this way. At GMATVERBAL, we have this whole new, dedicated section to help you understand the difference between, okay, evaluate and let's say describe, or explain and evaluate, things like that. Okay, I'm going to end the poll. Well, as you can see, slight change, not much actually, slight change. Very few of you believe A is the correct answer, and very few of you believe E is the correct answer compared to the earlier poll. So definitely, with a better understanding, you will come closer to your answer choices, although a lot of you still are not decided. Yes, Jay, it's still a wide division, and that is because you do not know the meaning of qualify, okay? And you have probably not asked questions that I asked. I deliberately did not ask that part, otherwise, okay? So let's go back to our passage now. Give me a moment. All right. Now see, the question is asking me, the reference of Robert Filmer was done primarily in order to do what? I remember that I read that because royalist ideology is associated with patriarchalism, that is why historians are puzzled. How come the royalist women all belonged, all the early feminists were royalist women? Why? Because royalist women had a totally different belief. So if I really connect the whole thing, Filmer was mentioned just to introduce the idea of patriarchalism, number one. And the idea of patriarchalism was associated with royalists. And the royalist ideology or this patriarchalism was all about power of the male king. But the royalist women wrote against this absolute male power. So again, I'll repeat. How did I make the connection? Filmer was mentioned to introduce patriarchalism. Patriarchalism was associated with royalist ideology. Royalist or Filmer's ideology was about power of the male. Royalist women wrote against absolute male power. So this patriarchalism was mentioned to show the contrast between what the royalist women believed and what the royalist ideology was. Okay, because later on, the author wants to decode the odd fact. So Filmer was referred to in order to focus our attention on the contrast between royalist ideology and the ideology of the royalist feminists. Okay. Keeping that in mind, if now I've brought my pre-thinking forward. Let's look at what A says. Okay. Robert Filmer was referred to primarily in order to show, okay, I can use the word show, that royalist ideology, okay, it was definitely to show something about royalist ideology, all right, was somewhat more radical than what other historians realize. This is all wrong, totally wrong. It was not to bring about a comparison between what some historians believe and what other historians believe. So this is totally out. That the royalist ideology was radical has been stated as an adjective for Filmer's patriarchalism. Okay, that was not the purpose of mentioning Filmer. Okay, if you see, royalist ideology is associated with radical patriarchalism. But whether this was more radical than what the historians appear to realize is not the point. So, okay, ask yourself like this: is the author's intention to indicate that royalist ideology was more radical? Ask yourself this part: is the author's intention to indicate that royalist ideology was more radical? And you'll get the answer: no. Ask yourself like this about primary purpose questions. So this is what we call out of scope. Totally. Next, B. 34% of you have marked B. Guys, what is the meaning of qualify? Tell me. And please don't Google for the answer. What is the meaning of qualify? Come on, chat. Send me the answer. Sorry, please answer in the chat box. What is the meaning of qualify? In the first poll also, 34% of you marked B. In this poll, again, 33% of you have marked B. I want to see whether you have marked it for the correct reasoning. So let's see. I'm getting some answers here. Rahul says qualify means validate. No, Rahul. Evaluate, no, Nasir. Certify, no, Abhishek. Prove, no, Augusta. Nirnay, eligible, no. Pratyusha, promote, no. JP, explain, no. Vibhor, substantiate, no. Vardhan, confirm, no. Can be judged from the fact, no. Provide support, Collins, no. Present contrast or exception, no. Ekra says support, no. Shubham is close. Augment or enhance. Shubham will not enhance in a way, but yes, qualify does mean to kind of make some kind of additions or limiting or in a way enhancing. Okay. Justify, Xenia, no. Support, no. Passing all criteria, no. Certify, no. Entitled to, no. Classify, no. Make equal to, no. None of you, I mean, I'm going to use the word none, guys, here. None of you are sure about qualify. And think, how are you going to eliminate this choice in the right manner if you don't know the meaning? So it's very, very important to understand the answer choice before you can get it right. Now let's see whether this is correct or not. First, we will understand the meaning of qualify. Qualify means to limit the strength or meaning of a statement. Okay. Or in a way you can say to kind of augment, but that will depend on the context. So here the context doesn't tell us anything. Qualify basically means if you qualify a claim, you're basically limiting the strength of something. I'll give you an example. Say I say, let's look at a statement like Indians can become safe from corona if the Indian government makes vaccination an easier and faster and cheaper process. So the if part is qualifying my first part of the statement. Okay, I'm qualifying it with that if. I'm saying if this happens, then something will happen. That's one of the examples of qualification. All right, to limit the strength or meaning of a statement. Only if the government is going to do this, then only this will happen, for example. So ask yourselves, does the author want to limit the strength or meaning of any claim? Does the author want to limit the strength or meaning of any claim? What claim? Okay, let's see. Here they are mentioning claim that patriarchalism formed the basis of royalist ideology. Does the author question this? Does the author want to limit the strength of this? Does the author kind of augment or enhance this? No, not at all. The general claim is that royalists followed Filmer's ideology. So the answer is no. The author doesn't want to limit the strength or meaning. He's just mentioning it for some other purpose. So again, this is a distortion. They have just picked words, added the word qualify, and okay. How about this? Guys, how did you like this technique? Yes, guys. How about this technique? Did you ever think of doing it like this? How about this technique? Okay, let me reset my question. How did you like this technique? Yes, how did you like this technique? Let me just reset the poll. I think I asked the question, my bad, wrong. So Supriya liked it a lot. Guys, let me repeat my question. How did you like this technique? How did you like it, this technique? Did you like it? Did you find that it works perfectly? So how to understand the difference between qualify, trace is when you are practicing these passages and when you come across these words, please understand their meaning, understand their implication. Otherwise, you're lost. So Manish, we've just about completed a quarter of, okay. Let's say the session will go on till 10:30 at least. So we have an hour, Manish, and I'm going to repeat the process with a different passage. So Supriya says GMAT is trying to fool us all and we are in this trap. Well, it's not trying to fool you. It's trying to see how cool you are, how logical you are, how smart you are in choosing the answer choices. Okay. Well, let's go to the next. So B is incorrect. 34% of you marked B in the first poll. 33% of you still went for B in the. So I think most of the time it was just a familiarity of words like the word claim. So this was familiar, patriarchalism was familiar, basis was familiar, ideology was familiar, and you just marked it. I'm sure that happened. What was not familiar was qualify. So you thought, okay, let me mark this. Qualify must be something, support or something. Don't. See, okay, the primary purpose of referring to Filmer was in order to question. First of all, is the author questioning, challenging anything? The author is trying to clarify why something is odd, but is the author questioning anything? First of all, so I am not happy with the word question, the verb question. The function is not to question anything. Moreover, let's see what is the author going to question a view? No. What is that view? Most early feminists were associated with royalist faction. It's a fact, guys. Fact. English women, forerunner of modern feminism, are almost all identified with royalist side. This is a fact, and the author finds it indisputable. So the author is, this is a fact, and author does not question it. Author does not question it. Okay. So a good percentage of you mark this. Question means to raise doubts, disagree, or even challenge something. Ask yourselves, is the author doubting the fact that early feminists were all royalists? No. The author is saying that it's an indisputable fact that 17th century English women were all identified with royalist side. So this is the opposite of the premise, guys. And because you did not read properly, you got this, you mark this. Don't look for familiar words, guys. Don't look for familiar words. Look for meaning. And for that, you need to read the sentence properly. And for that, you need to be taught how to read a sentence, which we do in our SC section. Okay. Now, remember our pre-thinking is Filmer was referred to in order to focus our attention on the contrast between royalist ideology and royalist feminist ideology. This choice says highlight, so I'm thinking focus. An apparent tension, I'm thinking contrast. Between royalist ideology and ideas of early feminists, I'm thinking this. So D has everything going for it. Okay. D is the correct answer. My point is, those of you who got it right, please check. Did you get it right for the right reason? GMAT is trying to qualify the set of students. Well, yes, that's true, Shubham. Well, yes, Rahul, it makes a lot of sense to find find the correct way of elimination. All right. Good, Supriya, you got it right. Good. All of you got it right. I'm very happy for you. If you got it right for the right reason, I'm even more happy. All right. Wonderful, guys. Let's eliminate E also. Argue. So let me see. Is the purpose of the author to argue? Well, not really, but I'm going to kind of leave it in the lurch. Argue, okay, argue and describe. Since the author is talking about an odd fact, maybe he's trying to argue about what is odd about it. Not very happy with it. Royalists held conflicting opinions. Did the royalists hold conflicting opinions? Well, it seems to imply all the royalists held conflicting opinions. But actually, it was Filmer was not mentioned to show that royalists held conflicting opinions. Filmer was mentioned to show that royalist ideology was different and royalist women followed a different ideology. Okay, so this is a little twisted. There may have been no consistent differences between royalists and parliamentarians. Okay, so here we are not talking about conflicts. All right, this is just a distortion of some lines from here and there. We are talking about conflicting opinions and family organization, women's political rights, which is taken from this line. All of it is put together and we call it a distortion and half-truth trap. So E is also out. Very small percentage of you kind of agreed with A and E towards the end. But so the key difference here between most of how you guys read was the reading speed versus the comprehension speed. My reading speed was slow, very slow, but my comprehension speed was like super high. Perhaps most of you, your reading speed was really good, but your comprehension speed was somewhere, I don't know. Okay. So what's the answer to this? Involved and evolved reading, as you've already seen, is like, think like the author, guys. You said boring passages. You won't feel bored if you really take an interest in the passage. If you think like this, that I'm going to learn something new. Tomorrow when I'm standing in a group of people and they're talking about parliamentarians and royalists and feminists and stuff like that, patriarchalism, I'm not going to look like a fool. I'm not going to be standing there with my jaws open and not knowing what to say. So always remember, knowledge coming from anywhere is knowledge. Okay. So think like the author, take an interest in what the author is saying. Think you're having a conversation with the author. The author is trying to tell you something. Understand the author's point of view. Over 70% of the questions are based on the author's point of view. You would have seen here also how I focused on author. What's the author saying? Why is the author saying here? Okay, and you saw there was a question related to that. So how do you read in an involved and evolved manner? You break the sentence into small pieces. You derive the meaning of that particular piece. You ask questions about it. You try to understand what is the meaning. And for the subsequent, you derive the meaning of the overall sentence by breaking it into small chunks and putting together the meaning of all the chunks. Then for every next question, you do the same thing. You break it, read it, derive meaning, but you also relate back to the previous sentence. You would have seen how I did that in this paragraph also. What I read at the beginning, I kept relating to it. When I read the second sentence and when I read the third sentence, I kept relating to the previous sentence. This relating back is very, very important. That will help you understand what the author is trying to tell you. Okay, here you can use the transition words and conjunctions to help you relate back. And then finally, we summarize, okay, each paragraph. It doesn't have to be grammatically correct, just to get the essence of it. Okay, that's involved and evolved reading for you. So it is all about building the right RC skills, telling you where to pause. At GMATViz, we teach students where they should pause, how to kind of identify the meaning of difficult words with the help of the context. Then, we teach you how to identify facts and opinions, how to note the opinions and what is the importance of noting opinions. You have to differentiate between what is the author's opinion and what is the third party opinion. And you have to understand the intent of the author. So building the right RC skills is very, very important before you will become proficient in RCs. It's not just about solving passages, guys. All right. We teach you how to read the passages. First, we teach you how to read the passages. If you can see, there's an entire section here. Can you see this one here? Okay. Over 10 hours are dedicated to this skill builder. Just that. Okay. How to read in an involved manner with the help of transition words, how to make para summaries. All right, all of it. You have small video lessons, like say for example noting transition words. We have a video lesson on this which tells you how to notice the transition words, how that will tell you the purpose of the opinions in RCs. Okay. And there are video lessons, there are quizzes on those kind of concepts. And you can see the kind of time dedicated to each and every aspect. So guys, before I bring up passage 2, there's a request here that I've got to make. So Rahul is saying, I like the passage now. Rahul, it's a very interesting passage actually. A lot of these humanities passages, if you read them, you'll realize that the America that you know as it is today, it wasn't always like this. Especially in terms of women, in terms of freedom, liberty, all those lofty ideals that America stands for. It was at a time a country which was, run by people who had been sent out from England as either thieves or prisoners to this new world. Anyway, let's not go back into that far. So Rajavi is asking a question. Good that you asked this, Rajavi. When you say question, okay, questioning means you don't agree with it. All right. So we cannot use the word question to show that the author is concluding something. All right. It's a wrong word to use for the word conclude. If you want to say conclude, then you say conclude. Okay, the author is trying to conclude, the author is trying to say that author is suggesting, the author is presenting, but never questioning. Okay. So Ekra says, I was not 100% confident. Okay, Saurav, can you show the slides where you summarize the concepts once more? Summarize the concepts. I didn't get you, Saurav. Which slide are you talking about? Are you talking about the slide where we had the passage? I'm not so sure what you're talking about. Are you talking about this? Is this the slide you're talking about, Saurav? These are some of the concepts that you need to understand and develop. So if this is what you were referring to. All right, guys. So I want you to try to use this. I don't know, current slide 4 is, hold on. This one? Okay, this one. This is the one. All right. So that's involved in evolved reading, guys. Don't worry. I'm going to share the PDF of this session with you at the end of the session. So if you stay till then, yeah. All right, guys. So I'm going to bring up the next passage for you, Saurav. Are you done with this? Can we move on? If you have any queries, then you can ask me at the end of the session. Let's get started with the next passage. The next passage is a GMAT whiz question, or the one that you solved just earlier. That's an OG question. But what's going to come up is a question, a passage that I have kind of put together, and the question is again GMAT whiz question bank, again, which I have made. All right, let me bring up the passage then. Here's the passage. That's the one question. All the best. Get set going, guys. So again, you have 3 minutes. All right. I'm going to give you 3.5 minutes. I want you to practice the involved and evolved reading. So Deepak, yes, it was a 700 plus level question. And this passage, which is a GMAT whiz passage, this is also a 700 plus level passage. All right, guys. Your time's up. So I am going to close the polls. And I request you to put in your answers before I do so. Okay. Now, just one question, guys, before I end the polls. How many of y'all, okay, let me first end the polls and I'll ask you the question. So please put in your answers. Jay, I have noted your answer. Don't worry. All right, here goes the countdown. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Okay. All right, let's look at the results. 24% of you marked A, 42% of you marked B, 21% of you marked C, small percent with D, 9% with D, and 3% with E. We still have varied results, but it seems B is a clear winner. Anyway, so let me ask you the question I wanted to ask you guys. How many of y'all tried to follow the involved and evolved reading? The word is, the emphasis is on tried. How many of y'all tried to follow it? How many of y'all tried to follow the involved and evolved reading method? Honestly, guys, if you did not, no issues, you can tell me no. But if you did, okay. So almost all of you did. Great. And see, you may or may not have got the answer right. But here's another question. Let me reset the poll first. Let me reset it. So, since I have it that almost all of you tried to use the involved and evolved reading method, irrespective of the fact that whether you got the question right or not, did you feel more confident when you were marking your answer choice? What was the feeling? Did you have more control, more confidence in your understanding of the passage? Did you? Did you feel that you had understood the passage better? You had more control, you were a little more confident when you were solving the question as compared to the previous passage. Okay. Again, here I have most of you did feel more confident. Again, remember, guys, this is just one short practice that you've had. Imagine what it can do to your, confidence, to your skill if you do this regularly. Yes, Rahul, that will get better with. So initially, you might take as much as 6-7 minutes to read a passage, which gradually comes down to about 4 minutes or 4.5 minutes, which is fine because you will be reducing the time that you take on answering the questions if you have read the passage thoroughly. Okay. Now let's get set and go. To put things simply, so the author is trying to simplify something. Okay. Induction emphasizes the individual. Now, I don't know what is induction, let's say. So it is something that stresses on, look how I simplify the words I know. It is something that stresses on the individual, okay? Whereas, now that's a transition word. So a contrast is going to be drawn up between induction and something else. Deduction, okay, there I have it. So it's basically induction versus deduction. So induction stresses on the individual. Deduction is more about, it begins with generalization. So that's the contrast, all right? Okay, so I'm going to note that down in my mind. The passage is introducing two terms, induction and deduction. Induction stresses on the particular or individual or specific. Deduction starts from making generalizations. All right, let me go forward. Science, okay, science, sorry about that. Science largely began with a focus on deduction. Now, I'm asking myself, why is the author talking about how science began? The author is kind of trying to show that the focus was on deduction at the beginning. So is the author, probably later on we're going to talk about a change in that focus, because there is a distinct taste of contrast right from the beginning. This I'm doing automatically, this questioning and answering. Okay, it's something which will happen automatically if you're involved in the passage. So right at the offset, the author is talking about two terms, contrasting the two terms, and then he's talking about how focus was on one term at the beginning of science or something. So science largely began with a focus on deduction. Deduction means this generalization, trying to find universal laws. Okay, so science kind of tried to find universal laws, and for that it focused on deduction, hoping to explain as much about the world as possible. Okay, so science was all about generalization at the beginning. Okay, in the late 19th century, so from beginning we now come down to 19th century, generalizations means deductions reached a pinnacle of overuse. So if I don't know the meaning of pinnacle, which by the way means peak, I'll still read on. Okay, in the 19th century, generalization reached overuse. It was used too much, particularly for explaining human characteristics. Okay, so by the 19th century, too much of generalization had been used, while deduction became disfavored because of those missteps. Which missteps? This overuse, probably. So while is again a transition word, kind of telling me, either it's telling me a contrast or it's going to tell me about how two things happened simultaneously. So while deduction became disfavored, okay, all right, because of that overuse, induction rose to favor. And how did it rise to favor? More quantitative techniques for describing individual objects. Remember, induction was all about the individual. Okay, so this is my kind of the gist of the whole thing. Subsequently, induction gained popularity because of the techniques it used. So from the paragraph, I can understand that we're talking about two terms. Probably there are two processes, and he's showing how one gained favor over the other. That's it. All right, clear, guys? So Manish, you joined late. Is this clear? So Shubham, probably this interaction is better. Yes, that is always better. Yes, Nirnay. It is thinking like the author, which is the key. Great. So is this clear, guys? Let me reset the poll and ask you this question. All clear with this paragraph? Okay. I'm going to now read the second paragraph for you. The one where the question focuses on, and see how I'm going to decode it. Okay. Here comes the second paragraph. Problem of induction. So now see, this is how I'm going to connect with the previous passage. The previous passage ended on a note which says deduction became disfavored. Okay, and induction gained favor. However, in this paragraph, the author says induction also has a problem. What is that problem? Let's read on. Impossibility of observing every individual case. So induction is all about individual, emphasizing the individual, but the author is saying there's a problem with it. You cannot take care of every individual case. So I'm inferring that, okay, induction is a process where you observe individual cases, but here the author is saying you can't observe every individual case. Okay. So let's say if I have 1,000 cases, all right, I cannot observe all. All right, let me see. Okay, cannot observe all. So let's read on. In other words, so the author is going to explain what he means by this problem. There is always uncertainty about what hasn't been directly observed, and it is impossible to observe everything. So let's say out of these 1,000, I'm just taking a ratio, guys. Possible, let's say 700 can be observed, and let's say 300 cannot be observed. Now the author is saying there will always be uncertainty about the ones that you haven't been able to observe. Okay. So now the author is telling us, so because of all this, so what? Some kind of conclusion is going to be drawn to help fill the gaps between observation. All right, so I have 700 observations, but I don't have observations on the 300. So to fill the gap of this 300, what are we going to do? We are going to make generalizations. So in induction also, I have to use generalization. That's the problem, it seems. Okay. And how are you going to use the generalizations? These generalizations are going to be based on what has been observed so far. Okay. So the 700 that you have observed, you are going to generalize, and you're going to use that generalization to get data about these 300. All right. Now I have a full understanding. In modern science, these generalizations, which generalizations? This one, which is based on observed individual cases. Okay, these generalizations, or what are they called? Predictive guides, take the form of scientific models. Okay, so these the generalizations made on the basis of individual cases, which is induction, they kind of form scientific models. There are different kinds of models. One of the most popular is empirical model. Okay, so far I don't know why the author is telling me about these different models. Defining a model as empirical emphasizes the fact that it is built from or calibrated on, let's say I don't know what is calibrated, but I do know what is built from observed data. Okay, so empirical means you have drawn something based on actual observed data. The purpose of the model, which model? This scientific model, which is based half on generalization, half on induction. Okay, this helps the researcher to understand system dynamics and make predictions. All right, but the application of the model, that is the generalization, okay, to unknown situations is deduction. So this model is the generalization, and generalization is applied to unknown situations, and that process is known as deduction. So ultimately what I have understood is, the paragraph talks about the problem with induction. Induction cannot really observe each and every case. However, I'm inferring that even if I can't observe each case, I have to draw a conclusion about the ones that I can understand. So how do I fill in the gaps? Okay, I have to fill in the gaps. And because if I can't, even if I can't observe all cases, there's, sorry, my bad here. Cannot observe each. So there is always this feeling of uncertainty. To cover the gap left by unstudied cases, generalizations must be drawn. And these generalizations produce models that are applied to make deductions. So I'm thinking the summary is, this paragraph talks about the problem with the process of induction and how induction helps to develop generalized predictive models that are used for deduction. If I look at the flow of the passage, the author introduces two terms or processes and says one gain favor over the other. Then the author describes the process of induction, its problems, and its predictive models for deduction. Now, for the question which talks about what is the problem of induction, I'm going to put together some thoughts. The second paragraph talks about problem with induction. I like the problem with induction is, you have to cover the gap left by unstudied cases using generalizations, which means the problem of induction is that it has to somewhat resort to deduction. That's the problem. Okay. All right. Clear? That's what I have understood. Is this clear, guys? Let me ask you this. Is this paragraph clear? So Nayan, vocalizing will reduce your speed, but if you want to read it out aloud, you can read it out aloud. Not like at the volume that I am reading it out aloud, but I think you can do it. You can kind of do that murmuring, doesn't matter. Yes, Augusta, you must master SC before coming to RC. It makes a huge difference. It tells you how to break a sentence, where to understand the modifier, where to join the subject and verb, understanding who is doing what. Makes a lot of difference. So, Jay, think about it like this. The whole problem is that you cannot observe all data. So how is that a problem? The problem is you have to generalize. See, if you're going to use generalization, then why use induction in the first place? Isn't it? You're welcome, Augusta. Why use induction in the first place if you're going to land up using generalization? So that's the way I see that seems to be a problem. So Gauri, choosing the options means reading very carefully between one option and the other. Sometimes what happens, and I've noticed this in my students with whom I take private tutoring, that they start reading the sentence properly, but towards the end, they get lost. They don't pay much focus to the end of the sentence. And some twist is there in the end, at the end of a sentence, and the meaning goes here and there, and you mark the wrong answer. So when you say options feel similar, yes, they feel similar, Gauri, but they're actually not similar. So you have to focus on each and every word. Let's say you've narrowed down the choices to the last two. Differentiate between the last two options. That's going to get you in the right place. Okay, Gauri? Great. So I can see that you have understood this paragraph. Now let's get back to answering our question. The question was, what is the problem of induction? Okay. And majority of you all marked B as the answer. 41% of you marked the answer. Let's see if it is correct or not. 24% of you marked A. So let's see if A is correct or not. It was between A, B and C really. So let's see which one is correct. It here will refer to what? Okay, it refers to induction since that was our question. Let's see. This is how I examine my answer choices. Gauri, look at how I'm examining the answer choices. Induction fails in its observations of individual cases. Stop here. Ask yourself, is it written in the passage that induction fails in the observation of individual cases? No. It says that it cannot observe every individual case. The word every, guys. So this is a distortion of the first half of the sentence in this paragraph. You know, instead of saying it fails to observe all the individual cases, here the choice says it fails in the observation of individual cases, which is wrong. And has to depend on, yes, it has to depend on something. On speculative measures, no, it's not speculative, remember, because it is, where was it? Let me just, it was based on what has been observed so far. So it is not based on speculative measures to fill the gaps. So see the parts which are correct. Okay, see the parts which are incorrect. And therefore, A is actually incorrect. Gauri, so 24% of you marked this right. My question is to those of you who marked A as the correct answer. My question is to those of you who marked A as the correct answer. Is it clear why A is wrong? Those of you who chose A, can you see why A is incorrect? Learn to examine your answer choice like this, guys. Data sufficient, not sufficient. Sufficient, not sufficient. Okay, passage does tell us that induction cannot observe all cases. But the passage does not tell us that induction cannot observe cases. That's a difference. One small word and there's a difference. Okay, great. So all of you, those who marked A, have now seen why you were wrong. Let's look at B, which is the correct answer. Good. I think a lot of you all might have looked at this and thought, no, this can't be the answer. It talks about the advantage and we have to identify the problem. When I was making this question, I deliberately put the word advantage there. I knew it would throw off people. Those are traps, guys. Always read the entire sentence carefully. So its here refers to, again, induction. So we are basically saying induction's advantage is, okay, let me see, its basis, okay, and what is the basis? The basis are the specific observations, okay, of individual cases, yes, but all right, it too has to resort to generalization of some specific cases. Yes, this is a problem. So I would say B is in line with the pre-thinking. Now, if I were solving this in the exam, I would keep B on hold. Maybe I'll not immediately mark it, but I'm pretty much convinced that this sentence is not really telling me about induction's advantage. It's telling me, okay, there are some advantages, but this is the disadvantage. The disadvantage is it cannot observe all cases. It still has to resort to generalizations for some cases. So I'll hold on to B, but B is the correct answer. So 40% of you got it, 41% of you got it right as compared to the previous question, guys. And I would like to think that this is because of involved and evolved reading. Only you can tell me whether it is or not. Let's look at C. Again, a very good percent of you marked C, I think 20% roughly. It means induction. Okay. Cannot draw up a predictive model. Well, I'm going to hold on there. Can it not draw up a predictive model? Nothing is mentioned about induction not being able to draw up a predictive model. Unless and until, okay, there is a condition mentioned here. Can I infer this condition? Let me see. It means induction has studied all the individual cases involved. Now, this is wrong. We know that even if induction cannot study all the individual cases, it does evolve a predictive model based on the generalization that it does. So predictive models cannot be drawn until all cases are studied. Is just the opposite. Actually, induction draws up predictive models without studying all cases because it cannot study all cases. The gaps are filled in by the cases which are studied. Remember the equation I gave you. Out of, let's say, 1,000 cases, 700 are observed, 300 are not observed. Generalizations are made on the basis of what is observed, and predictive models are drawn up. So this choice is incorrect, guys. It is the opposite of what the passage intends to tell us. Its predictive guides are all built on the basis of imprecise observation. Wrong. The passage does not say that all observations are imprecise. Perhaps the observations that are made on the basis of generalization, they could be imprecise. But what about the individual cases? Can we say with certainty they are all imprecise? We can't. So this is a distortion. It is ultimately used for making general predictions. What is used to make general predictions? The model. Okay. This is talking about the function of deduction. The function of deduction. Okay. The model is based on generalizations and induction. Okay. Part of the function of deduction is to help make predictions for the future. Look at the last line. Application of the model is deduction. So the question was about the problem of induction, not the function of deduction. Therefore, incorrect. Yes, guys. Clear? Are we all clear on this? Are we all clear on this question? This particular passage in this question? So, Augusta, that's the learning. Every word has to be chewed upon and read. Okay? Make your brain concentrate on every word. Gauri, I hope this helped you to understand how you can eliminate answer choices without getting confused. Okay, great. And guys, how did you like the passage? Did you like the passage? So Rahul, if you have shortlisted B and C, okay, how are you going to eliminate? Okay, interesting. Let's go back. Now B says, okay, its advantage is the observation of individual cases. Okay, this is not even mentioned in C, so you don't need to worry about this. And B says that induction too has to fall back on generalization of some cases. True. Now, if you look at C, it's a very absolute answer. It says it cannot draw up predictive models. From the passage, we know that induction can draw up predictive models with the help of generalization, right? But the problem is with the word unless and until. Ask yourself, Does the passage say that all individual cases have to be studied before drawing up a predictive model? No. And that is how you rule out C. Okay? Ask questions about information given in the answer choice. Augusta, ask a question on the given answer choice. Ask yourself, does the author say this? Is it what he means? Is that what was implied? Does the author say this? Thank you so much, Nirnay, if you found that helpful. In fact, I'm going to share with you guys the link to the free trial version of our course. Okay, just give me a moment. I'm going to put it there on the sticky message that is right on the top of your chat box. That's the link for the free trial version of GMAT course. So Rahul, if you're not chewing between each and every word, you will go wrong. Augusta, I hope you, Rahul, you've got to see, you can make the differentiation between B and C. Moving forward, the next big issue that most of you might be having it going on in your minds is, what about the time? Guys, it may seem time consuming, and it probably is at the beginning. But you know what? The time irony I said I'll discuss with you. All right? I'll discuss with you very quickly. Give me a moment. With practice, this process will become second nature. Right now, you are being forced to do something that is not intuitive. But once it becomes intuitive, it's like a cakewalk. I mean, think back on when you were learning how to drive. You had to think about everything, like, you know, you had to be aware of, okay, I'm now putting in this gear, and there's the clutch, and okay, my legs are now on the accelerator, and things like that. But now when you open the door of the car, do you even think about it? Nothing. It's so well coordinated. So anyways, with practice, this process is going to become second nature. You'll be able to map the passage, you'll be able to understand the flow of the data, and you'll be able to derive the author's point. But you have to give yourself time, patience to develop the skill. It's a skill, guys. Okay, it's not just a formula as such. In fact, I don't know if we have time for this passage or not. Let me just take a quick look at the time. I don't think we'll have enough time for this passage. Guys, do you want to do this passage? Let me take a poll from here. Yes, guys. How many of y'all? There's just one question I'll give you. How many of y'all want to do this passage? There are 2 paragraphs and 1 question. All of you? Okay, great. Then let me share the PDF with you. The PDF has, 1 second. I'm going to share the PDF of the passage, this passage. So there are 2 paragraphs. I'm sharing it with you. Can you guys see it? Go to the files thumbnail at the left-hand side of your chat box and download the passage. It has 1 question, 2 paragraphs and 1 question. This is the passage, and the question is there in the PDF. Can you guys see the passage? Quickly. I'm not going to discuss the detail. I'm not going to read through this passage, but I'm just going to help you solve that 1 question. So if you want to quickly take it on. Great. Your time starts now, guys. And I'm going to share the session PDF with you by the end of this session. Let me also share a few links with you. If you want to set up a call with our strategy expert, here's the link to Calendly. Go ahead, guys. I'm going to give you a quick 4 minutes, 4 or about 4.5 minutes. Although there's just 1 question, the passage is a little difficult. All right, guys, your 4 minutes are up. So those of you who have not put in your polls, please start putting them in. I'll just start my countdown in a short while. Here starts my countdown. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. So since we don't have enough time, I'm just going to give you a brief summary of the first 2 paragraphs, and then we'll discuss the answer to the question. But I can still see the polls moving, so please put in your answer choices so that I can end the polls. Okay, I'm going to end the poll now, guys. 10% of you marked A, 15% B, 15% C, 40% D, and 20% E. Okay. Let's now go to the, quickly let's analyze the passage. So here's the first paragraph. Now the summary of the first paragraph is here. The author introduces the subject that is being studied by Antonia Castaneda. Let's call her AC. She is studying the 19th century depiction of Mexican women in literature, how Mexican women were shown in the literature of 19th century. There are certain observations she makes about the writers of the 19th century. They just mentioned the women as mothers and wives. Okay, the economic role of women took a back seat there. The author mentions about industrialization and how it hit the home-based agricultural economy. And finally, Castaneda talks about Mexican women called Californianas, how their economic position was protected by the Hispanic law, but the law generally did not protect the non-Hispanic women. Okay, so we have one huge category called women, and women in general were depicted only as mothers and wives, okay, in the domestic role of wives and mother. And out of these women, the non-Hispanic women, their economic rights were not protected by law, but the economic rights of these Californianas, who were the Mexican women, was protected by the Hispanic law. So I'm thinking Hispanic law probably is the Mexican law. All right. So if I summarize this paragraph, this introduces Castaneda's area of research and explains Castaneda's findings, okay, the difference in the economic status between the Californianas and the non-Hispanic women. Okay, and if I look at the second para, it's mainly talking about this typical plot and how these Californianas were portrayed in that plot. Remember, the passage was about how Mexican women were portrayed in the literature of 19th century. So this gives us an idea that these Mexican women, they were portrayed in a very favorable manner, okay, in these plots written by male non-Hispanic novelists. They showed that these the fortune-seeking non-Hispanic men, they wanted to marry rich Hispanic women. Typical plot. So the Hispanic women were portrayed in a favorable manner. The author says that favorable portrayal of such women means the elite Californianas, okay, is noteworthy. Why? Here the author says that unflattering depictions of Mexicans was there. So Mexicans in general were portrayed unflatteringly in literature, but these elite Californianas or Mexican women of California who had property rights, they were portrayed favorably. And why? That's given here, okay. The importance of economic alliances explains this apparent contradiction. Which contradiction? This okay, versus this. So that's what this paragraph really talks about. The summary is, this paragraph explains how the Hispanic laws favorable towards rich Mexican women in California were responsible for the favorable portrayal of these women in novels. Okay. So the question was, let me see, any issues, guys? I have been a little quick here because we don't have time, but those of you who've read, you'll be able to identify. Now let's look at the question. The apparent contradiction mentioned in the line refers to which discrepancy? Now, just now we did pre-thinking. The discrepancy, so if you have reached apparent contradiction, let's trace back our steps. The only contradiction that is mentioned is favorable portrayal of such women, unfavorable depiction of Mexicans. Okay, so let's see. Is the discrepancy between legal status of Mexican women in territorial California versus their status in United States as a whole? No. And the depiction is not about the legal status as such. So A is out. Sorry, guys. A is out. How many of you all marked A? Let me just pop back and look at the poll. 10% of you marked A. So I don't think you understood the question correctly. The question is asking, what is the apparent contradiction mentioned in that paragraph? Not just in that line, okay? It's not just about that line. Perhaps you just thought the contradiction was about the immediately preceding line. It's not just about immediately preceding line. See, there is something that I call global inference and local inference. If you rely on local inference, that is inferring only from one part, you will go wrong most of the time. Think about a global inference, overall understanding of the passage. So, next, unflattering depiction of Mexicans in novels, yes. Versus actual public sentiment about the American war, no. So B is also out. Again, how many of you marked B? 10%, 15% marked B. 15% mark C, 40% marked D. Okay, let's move on. Is the discrepancy between existence of many marriages between Californianas and non-Hispanic merchants? No. Sorry. This part is mentioned, but is the difference between this? Not really. Versus strictures against them expressed in novels, not even mentioned anywhere. So this is out. Literary depiction of elite Californianas versus, yes. Literary depiction of Mexican individuals, yes. So D is the correct answer. 41% of you got that right. I hope you got it right through the right methods of reading and elimination. Do let me know in the chat box, guys. Did this session help you perform better at this question? Do let me know in the chat box. Let me bring up the polls because 40% of you marked this. Did this session help you perform better at this question? Novelistic portrayals of elite Californianas. Here it's right, but privileged lives? No. Distortion. Actual circumstances of those lives? No. So E is out. D is the correct answer. Yes. Rahul, yes, this was an official passage. This was also a 700 level passage. And the question itself was actually a question where less than 50% of the people on the sessions got it right on the GMAT club. So it's a really difficult question. So historians understand novels here refer to literature. So historians also write literature. So literary portrayals. And this is an official question. You can't argue with it, Nishant. So of the 5 options, only B is correctly referring to, if you look at it, where is it given that historians were unflatteringly portrayed the Mexicans? It's given that unflattering literary depiction. So unflattering depiction of Mexicans in literature. Literature, novel is a type of literature, Nishant. Okay. So guys, I told you earlier about, this is where people fall. Fall for the traps. You infer locally, you search for an answer from a small part of the passage, you read the question, go back to the passage. It doesn't work. You have to have a complete understanding of the passage. And most of the time you realize after you have kind of, solved many passages. Because of that local inference, you end up picking wrong choices. You just fall for some familiar words and distortion. In fact, there are lots of traps like that which we teach you about in our course. Distortion, half truth, confusing words, limited scope, opposite, out of scope, generalization, irrelevant. And if you see these traps before, while you're building your skill, you will not waste your time, you'll not despair. How to tame these traps? You should go through the solutions of each and every question. You have to learn about these traps and understand how GMAT plays with them. For every question, you need to learn to eliminate each choice and categorize the incorrect choices in one of these buckets. You have to tally the reason while you're reviewing the solution. Unless you get the reason right, you haven't got the question right. This is very important, actually. Your practice won't work unless you read the passage in depth, and you cannot eliminate the choices if you haven't read the passage in depth. So taming the traps is very, very important. And for that, you need to go through each and every solution to understand whether your analysis, whether your reasoning matches with what should have been the correct approach. In fact, this is just a quick detail about one of our students. I'll share the link to his debrief. He achieved from a 650 to 730, and the major factor was the RC. Okay, he improved his understanding of the methodology, really reviewed the solution in depth. We write out very in-depth solutions. You've seen how I explained each and every choice, and all the solutions I have personally written on the platform, and each of them are detailed, so you can check against them whether your reasoning is correct or not. All right, identify the patterns, identify your peak areas, and improve. That's what he did, Akshat. I'll just give you the link about his debrief. Just give me a moment. So let me see, some queries are there. August is asking, word palm made easy. Many of my friends suggested this for vocabulary. Well, word palm made easy by Norman Lewis is a book that can enrich your vocabulary, and in general, vocabulary enrichment is required. If you want to excel in verbal, you need to do well in, you need to know some words. But I think GMAT format at least is not vocabulary dependent. Okay, it's better if you spend more time on SC, developing SC skills and RC skills. All right, and the words you can keep learning while you're solving the passages, while you're going through the SC, Augusta. All right, so I would suggest you do that. But Word Palm Made Easy is a very useful book. You can take it to improve your language over the course of, in general, because tomorrow if you want to go to a university where where English will be the medium of teaching, it's always going to be better to learn more words, right? So let me proceed forward. We teach you about the traps. There are dedicated, if you look at this ACE portion, okay, we dedicate a lot of hours to teaching you about these traps in answer choice elimination stage, that is ACE. All right, now the time saving irony I told you last, I'm going to discuss. You feel, if you look at the passage that you just, if you look at any average passage, if you read too quickly in first read, okay, you read it quickly in 2-3 minutes, a rough idea is formed of what's mentioned. You reread when you move to the choice, so you spend 2 minutes per question. Basically, if you're solving a 4 passage question or a 5 passage question, you will end up taking 9 to 11 minutes. On the other hand, a GMAT whiz student learns to solve this passage by reading it properly for the first time. Give more, almost double the time. Has a crystal clear understanding compared to reading quickly, and does not need to move back to the passage, eliminates choices confidently in about 45 to 60 seconds. So overall time taken for solving the passage is 8 minutes. See, you might not save much on time, but you'll save a lot on accuracy, guys. Trust me on that. So the irony is you feel you're saving time, but you're not. You're actually spending more time, or probably the same time, and the worst part is you're sacrificing accuracy. So guys, that was the session for you. All right. I would love to, hear your feedback from you. And here's a small, I'm going to start sharing the PDF with you. But in the meantime, here's a small rating that I request you do for the session. Any other feedback that you felt about the session, anything that you felt about the session, you can always write in the chat box. Any questions that you have, any queries that you have related to your prep, you can ask. And let me also start sharing the PDF with you. Give me a moment. So, Augusta, I hope you have, you're most welcome, Augusta. I don't know, is that your name? How do you pronounce it? Augusta would be AU. I know that. So once again, reminding you, there's a free trial link that I've posted on the sticky message right at the top of your chat box, and you can go through it. So Nasir, that's correct sentence. I'd have liked to do more passages. I'd is like I would have liked to solve more passages. Well, Nasir, next time you're always welcome to visit our website and go through some of the passages and solutions that we have put up there. Any other queries you have related to your preparation, guys, you can post. I'll be glad to answer them. You can also write to message at piyush@gmatviz.com or message at that WhatsApp number for any other queries. If you want to talk to Piyush, who is the GMAT strategy expert, he himself has scored 740 in GMAT. He's going to be able to help you through and through. It's an Italian bike manufacturer's name. Okay. All right. I stand corrected. Yes, guys, any other queries? Now, let me share the session PDF with you guys. I'm sharing the PDF with you exactly in the thumbnail where I was sharing the session passages. I hope you can see it. You're welcome. I'll again keep saying MA. So thank you, Augusta. Oh, great, Nasser. Nice to have you on board, and I hope it's helping you develop your reading comprehension skills. Rahul, if you have registered for this webinar, I think you will be getting a recording of the link to this recording in about a couple of days. So you get the session recording. Just in case, I have also therefore shared the PDF with you if you want to go through the process. Thank you so much, Jay. Thank you, Anshika. So guys, try to slowly incorporate this method of reading. All right, not just in your reading and comprehension, but for your SC questions, for your CR questions, to have better control, better grip, and better understanding of your text. You're welcome, Girish. Nice to have you on this session again. Good night. You're welcome, Rahul. All right, guys. You're welcome, Shivam, Chris. I wish all of you all the best for your GMAT as and when you give. You're welcome, Gauri. I hope you benefit from the session. All right, guys. Great to have had all of you here this evening. Take care. Keep learning, keep evolving, keep developing. You're welcome, Manish. You're welcome, Vardhan. You're welcome, Ikra. It was good interaction, yes. All right, guys, thanks all of you. And all of you, a warm welcome for so many thanks to me. You're welcome, Rajavi. I'll bid all of you a good night, as I don't see any more questions coming up. Take care, guys. And just for your information, every Friday we hold a webinar at this time. All right. And I think most of you will be sent the link. Thank you once again. You're welcome, Deepak. Great to having you on board. You're welcome, Steve. So thank you, guys. Good night. And I'm ending the session now.